Now let's summarize everything that we learned for the likely outcome of the phenotype from Shem to Abraham. Starting with Adam and Eve, early mankind would have had dark skin, specifically reddish medium brown skin, dark hair, and eyes. Noah and his sons likely were dark skinned. Before 8,000 years ago, the ancestors of all humans were dark skinned. A great example is Chatterman, who was a Paleo-European. Chatterman lived in the British Isles and carried haplogroup I. Haplogroup I today is shared by Europeans such as Scandinavians, but many other dark or black-skinned Europeans have been found in places such as Scandinavia before 8,000 years ago. The question we have to ask ourselves about Shem is that did he keep the same skin complexion as early man, or did his descendants' complexion change? Natufians are the ancestors of Semites. Natufians' morphology was African. Natufians had dark brown to black skin, dark hair, and brown eyes. Natufians likely resembled Ibero-Maurusians, and Ibero-Maurusians resembled Kefians. Therefore, one can make the argument that the ancestors of Semites were definitely dark-skinned. The ancestors of Abraham would have been dark-skinned, perhaps even African-looking. But did Abraham? According to anthropologists, Proto-Semitic populations were described as looking African. According to ancient remains found in places like Kish in Mesopotamia, Proto-Semites have been said to look East African. Abraham likely came from Mesopotamia. Could Abraham have looked like these Proto-Semites with an African morphology? Looking at the artwork of ancient Semites in Mesopotamia, it's no wonder why people say early Semitic populations resembled Africans. Semites in Mesopotamia depicted themselves with dark skin. Semites were medium brown to dark brown with black hair and dark eyes. Since Abraham is a Semite and is from Mesopotamia, one could make the broad claim that he would look like these dark-skinned Semites. In parts of the Middle East, such as Syria, there are dark-skinned Semites. Egyptians depicted these Bedouin Syrians, and the Assyrians did so as well. These groups have brown to black skin with black hair and dark eyes. Their hair is in locks and held with a band. Abraham could have came from Syria. We know that the wives of Isaac and Jacob did. Therefore, we could make the assumption that this is yet another example as to how some members of Abraham's family could have looked. We know that according to the narrative that there is some connection between Abraham and Chaldeans. Abraham could have looked like a Chaldean. Chaldeans are depicted as having dark brown skin, dark hair, and dark eyes. Chaldeans have even been described as African looking. It's even been stated that there is a connection between Chaldeans and Natufians. With that being said, Chaldeans have also been compared to with the Elamites. The Elamites are described as being African looking as well, and Elamites are the descendants of Shem through his son Elam. Both Chaldeans and Elamites have been described as looking similar to each other, which of course can't be overlooked. If we are to assume Abraham looked Chaldean and the Chaldeans looked like Elamites, then we can conclude that Abraham could have looked like Chaldeans and Elamites. But another method we can use to determine the phenotype of Abraham is by looking at the descendants of Joktan. Joktanites, who would be the closest and oldest ethnic relatives to Abraham. Joktan descends from Eber, and Joktan is the brother of Peleg. Joktan's descendants are the Joktanites, who are pure and original Arabs. They are said to have settled mostly in southern Arabia. Joktanites and southern Arabians have been described as looking like Africans. Putting all of this together, you begin to get a consistent picture. Early Semitic populations and ancient populations associated or related to Abraham are said to look African or Hamitic or Cushitic. Natufians and Proto-Semites are described as looking East African. Chaldeans, Elamites, and Joktanites are described as looking like Hamites. Old sources from Hebrews, Christians, and Muslims state that Shem and Ham basically look similar, i.e. light brown to medium brown to dark brown and even black skinned. According to Rabbi Eliezer, he blessed Shem and his sons black but comely, and he gave them the inhabitable earth. He blessed Ham and his sons black like a raven, and he gave them as an inheritance the coasts of the sea. The Persian historian Tabri quotes Ibn Abbas as saying, "Born to Noah were Shem, whose descendants' colors are a black complexion with a light brownish undertone and a dark blackish brown. Ham, whose descendants' colors are true black, and a few are a black complexion with a light brownish undertone. Bar-Hebrachus speaks of Noah dividing the world among his 3 sons, with Ham getting the land of the blacks, Shem the land of the browns. And according to the book History of the Messengers and the Kings, it reads, "The children of Shem settled in the center of the earth, which is between Satmah and the sea, and between Yemen and Syria. Allah made the prophets from them, revealed the books to them, made them beautiful, gave them a black complexion, luminous and free of blemish. The children of Ham settled in the south. Allah gave them a black complexion, and gave some of them a black complexion, luminous and blemish free. The descendants of both Ham and Shem resemble each other. Most, if not all, of Ham's descendants will be African, specifically Paleo-African, and hunter-gatherers and foragers. These African Hamites are Nilots, Nilo-Saharans, Sudanese, Cushites, Nubians, Khoisanes, Pygmies, and others. Shem's descendants settled in Asia and Africa. To simply put it, Shem's descendants would be Afro-Asiatic populations. With all that being said, ancient humans were all dark-skinned by default. Did Abraham come from a lineage that remained dark-skinned like their forefathers? You could make the argument and say yes, that he would have stayed dark-skinned, because there are many modern-day dark-skinned Semitic populations in the Middle East. And Abraham was from the Middle Bronze Age, which is a lot closer to that period of Proto-Semites. And simply looking at depictions and descriptions of Semites in Mesopotamia, Syria, Elamites, Chaldeans, and many others, putting everything together, they are clearly dark-skinned. They have medium brown to dark brown and even black skin, and they have thick, curly, black hair and dark brown eyes. Therefore, Abraham could have looked very much like these Semites based on the location and time period, as well as similarities. With that being said, perhaps the closest representation of Abraham based on scriptures, ancestry, and genetics is an Southern Arabian and Natufian look. South Arabians have the highest Natufian DNA as well. They are the closest to them. Looking at Southern Arabians is almost like looking at Natufians, and Natufians are the ancestors of Semites. Therefore, looking at South Arabians and Natufians is basically like looking at a Proto-Semite. Early Semitic populations, possibly more than likely, looked more like a Southern Arabian. Furthermore, we know that South Arabians are described as looking like East Africans in the Horn of Africa, such as Ethiopia. Therefore, we can also apply this morphology to Proto-Semites as well, and therefore Abraham. Therefore, to simply put it, I would say a good representation for the phenotype of Proto-Semites and Abraham would be populations of people living on both sides of the Red Sea, Arabians and Bedouins, as well as East Africans and Horners. I believe biblical Abraham in the flesh could have looked much like this man, dark-skinned with medium brown to dark brown skin with thick hair and dark eyes. With that being said, here is the best representation and face of Abraham, based on all of the information we applied. With that being said, be blessed and shalom.